Hello. Welcome to Kindly Neurodivergent with Kay. This show is to spend quality time with each other, kindly discussing the similarities and wide range of differences we experience. The experiences we discuss on this show are for educational purposes only. Please do not substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Before we begin, I respectfully request that if you witness any pauses during this show, please continue watching. I'm composing a spontaneous comment or question, someone processing their thoughts, in addition to repeating something that was unintelligible or misunderstood. It is natural discourse, and we can choose not to say anything while this is occurring. Today, Kelsie Olds is here with me. She is here to discuss Dungeons and Dragons supporting neurodivergent kids in play. Kelsie Olds, also known as the Occupational Therapist, is an occupational therapist who shares with thousands of people online every day, parents, teachers, fellow professionals, and adults healing their own childhoods, about the power of play in children's lives. Welcome, Kelsie.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. D&D is like one of my favorite things to talk about, so I'm really excited about it.
Please introduce yourself.
Well, my name is Kelsie Olds. I've been going by Mick a lot lately too. It's a nickname. I answer to both. I like it said, I'm an occupational therapist, and I live in Australia right now. I do a lot of online advocacy. I've lived in England, the US, and Australia within the last few years. Um, yeah, so I've got a pretty, I mean, I don't want to like oversell it, but like at this point, I have a fairly varied perspective on the way that OT runs in different countries, and even more than that, just like the similarities everywhere, that everybody's looking for the same answers. And so I'm trying to help share them.
Is it very different?
It is more different than I expected. That was a bigger change to me when I went from the US to England for the first time. When I went to Australia, I had the experience of having gone to England, and so I was more prepared. So I was more startled by it when we moved to England. I think that the communication difference is a big part of it, because a lot of times I'll say a sentence and it's understandable, but I'm using vocabulary or I'm saying it in a way that's like a little bit different than what everybody would expect. And so um they either like teach me the Australian word for things, or they'll just be like, the conversation will be like just a little bit off for a minute. And so that's been an adjustment, and I have to pronounce things sometimes the Australian way to get the kids who I work with to understand what I'm saying.
How did you come to use Dungeons and Dragons as part of your occupational therapy sessions with kids?
I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons since I think 2016, like as just a participant, like as a hobby, and I actually way back then I had one kid who was passionately interested about D&D, and I was like a new OT, and I was still trying to get him to do like handwriting practice, and so we just hand wrote a bunch of character stuff about Dungeons and Dragons, which is a game where you like, one person is sort of running the world, and then everybody else has their character, and their character's going around doing stuff in that world. So with this kid in this session, then we just like wrote out stuff that his character could do. And that was the first time that I ever used it in D&D, although it was a really unsophisticated version of using it because I was still basically just trying to get him to work on handwriting. But over time,
Please
then
explain what it is.
sorry, yeah. Dungeons and Dragons is a role playing game where one person is the person running the game. They make up the world, they make up scenarios. So they might be like, okay, you guys are all in a town and there's a quest board, and on the board, then there's one quest that says that somebody's got a lost dog. There's one that says that the wizard is doing something in his tower. I'm doing a bad job of making this up. But you basically one person is making up the whole world. And then everybody else has their character like, okay, and I'm playing a wizard who is an elf, and my elf wizard is gonna go and investigate the dog or whatever. Like they decide what their characters are gonna do. So if it was a video game, if it's not a video game, but if it was like a video game, I'm the computer and the video game in my brain if I'm the one running it, and then everybody else is the character going around and doing stuff within the video game, and I have to be the computer. Um, so when I play with kids, I am the one who runs it because they're being the character going around and doing stuff, and I'm being the one generating the scenarios or like what it is that they encounter or monsters they have to fight or treasure they have to get or whatever that is.
What kinds of odd goals do you target?
So with OT, then we do like in general the stuff that I end up working on is often about emotional regulation, is often about social skills because I usually do D&D stuff with OT when I have a group, because it's a very social game. You can play it with just one person making stuff up and just one person participating, but most of the time it works better if there's a group. And so we do social skills stuff. We do emotional regulation because it's really you're encountering challenges. You're even getting into frustrating situations where your character needs to find a way to problem solve. Um, we do executive functioning because you're planning what your character is going to do or figuring out different ways, different solutions, because a lot of times people will want to rely on, I have this one magic power, I just use it over and over and over again. And so I try to get kids to come up with creative problem solutions instead of just doing the same one over and over again.
So occupational therapy works on social skills or executive function despite overlap with speech-language pathologist.
Yes, in the general sense, yes. In the specific D&D sense, yeah, there's like a ton of overlap. A lot of times occupational therapy goals are almost like a little bit like some things that are in physical therapy, and a little bit like some things that are in speech therapy, and a little bit like some things that are in psychology, and a little bit its own thing. But it's a very, very broad and a very broadly defined profession. Um, and social skills can definitely be under the OT umbrella. Um, Although, in certain cases, we would be like, I also recommend, a speech therapist if there's not one on the kids' caseload and things like that.
Why is it under your field?
Um, like the history of occupational therapy is super complex and winding in a way that I don't think that physical therapy or speech therapy necessarily are. I think that they were a little bit more clearly defined from the beginning, and OT has always been a little bit ambiguous. Um, but at its heart, occupational therapy, people hear the word occupation and they think of your job because we often use the word occupation to mean job. Um, but it is a older version of the word than that. Like anything that occupies your time is what I say. So, your job does occupy your time. So does school. So does play. So does taking care of yourself. So does sleep and eating, and like all of those things are things that occupy your time. Anything in your life is something that occupies your
Interesting.
time. Yeah, and so socializing with other people, like how you have friendships or who you're friends with, or even people who you're not friends with but still have to have a socialization with, like your family members or your coworkers or the neighbor who talks to you sometimes or whatever. All of that still falls under OT's purview because those are still part of your occupations, not in the sense of your job, but in the sense of the things that occupy your time.
How does D&D help children practice flexible thinking, planning, or impulse control in a fun and meaningful way?
So, so if I'm the one making up like the scenario and the world, and the kid is the one being a character acting in that world, then especially because it's not just one kid, it's maybe three or four, and they're playing together. Then there is so much flexible thinking and planning and impulse control. Impulse control is a huge one because um, when the person who's making up the world says something like, "Okay, so there's this monster or there's this challenge. What do you do?" The impulse is, I'm going to jump in and talk over everybody else and just tell you my thing. And I want to solve it. And I want to be the cool one. And, I want to be the one who like wins this, and not to want to work as a team. And so I do a lot of, oh, okay, cool. Like you've had an amazing idea. Guys, everybody, they had an idea about this. And then I also want to hear what everybody else has to say so that other people get a chance to talk. And it's not just whoever is loudest or fastest gets to be the only one who solves everything. And I've seen this lead to some really beautiful moments where there were like almost a split between who wants to do what, and they really had to work it out, and negotiate about who wants to do what. Like a really silly example that's not like an important part of D&D, but a really silly example is that in the last one that I was running, um, there was like this tiny cow that had been magically shrunk, so it was tiny, and the characters tiny cow, and they were arguing about what they wanted to name it. And one of them was insistent going to name it like Little Timmy, and then one of them was insisted that they were going to name it like Razzle Dazzle, and then the kids like independently decided that they should vote. And then everybody voted for Little Timmy except the kid who wanted Razzle Dazzle, but they still wouldn't accept that. They were like, "Well, I'm not moving until we named the cow the thing that I want to." And so then they had to keep talking about it because like their first solution was to vote, but then the vote didn't work. That didn't feel satisfactory for everybody. And so then they ended up naming him like Little Razzle Dimmy or like something where they like combined the names, and then they were happy with that. And so they kept
Oh,
calling him Little Razzle Dimmy the whole entire game. And it's like, is that in the grand scheme of life the most important thing that the kids ever done? No, but it was amazing with flexible thinking and socializing with each other. And they suggested a solution, and then they tried and they did it fairly, and then it still didn't feel satisfactory. And then they had to suggest another solution, and they had to not get so frustrated with each other that they just like gave up or stormed out or whatever. And it was really good to see them be able to like work through all of that.
How do you adapt the game to meet different sensory, cognitive, or physical needs?
So I've had definitely like kids with I've only done it with kids, which is why I'm saying kids, but adults can definitely play D&D. I played D&D as an adult as well. But uh excuse me. I have definitely had an array of different needs in the participating in the game. One of the things that I do is try to set up the environment in a way that helps me with some of that. So I have a big room that I do it in at my clinic right now, and I set up like an inner ring made of pillows and chairs and bean bags, so all different kinds of comfy seating, and an outer ring made of like gross motor equipment, so like a wobble board or a yoga ball or a mini trampoline or things like that. And then so I told the kids that they can like sit in the middle if they can, or if they need to roll a dice or whatever, because sometimes you roll dice in D&D to see if what luck has to do with what you're doing. and then they can move to the outer ring and move their body however they want to, whenever they want to. So if they want to go jump on the trampoline, then that's great. I just have the trampoline in the outer ring so that it doesn't knock over other people's dice and stuff like that. And then they can move back to the inner if they get to where they want to sit down again.
Idea.
Yeah, and bringing that up like right at the beginning and being like, hey, like overtly naming it, like we all have different things that our bodies need. I want everybody to listen to your body. You don't have to ask my permission to get up and move around. This isn't school. You don't have to ask my permission to, eat your snack that you brought or go to the bathroom or anything like that. Um, and so that really helped with the sensory and with the physical. The kids
Is
were
it
they
always
really
successful?
it was pretty it's been pretty successful once I've kind of got this like system down where I've got this like two rings or whatever. It sounds like it's like some fancy thing. It's not. It's literally just like where I put the pillows in the room. But it's been decently successful. There was a little bit of like sometimes it'll tip into like too rowdy. So like they'll be like if I'm playing with four kids, one will be in the inner circle with me wanting to try to work on whatever. And then three of them are like chasing each other with a yoga ball. And so then at that point, I'll be like, it looks like everybody just needs a movement break. So why don't we just like take five and take a movement break? And it seems like that happens after about an hour with the kids who I work with, maybe like slightly over an hour. And then they're like, nope, I need a proper break where we're not even trying to do anything. Um, Cognitive wise, I have also definitely worked with kids with different levels of ability to read or write, and also like to understand the D&D rules. So there's like published Dungeons and Dragons, which is made by a company and it has a book of rules and stuff like that. I draw on that for inspiration, but a lot of what I do is a lot more simplified because we don't need to like add five numbers together and then divide them by three and blah 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 to like get the exact whatever. I'll just be like, okay, when you roll this dice, if you get more than a 10, you succeed. If you get less than a 10, something unlucky happens. We don't have to make it more complicated than that. And it's a dice with 20 sides. I realize that isn't what most people are thinking of. They think of a six-sided dice, but
Yeah. Oh.
yeah, it's got all kinds of dice. um and so the normal one for D&D has 20 sides, and usually you have more complicated ways of telling whether you succeeded or failed at something. But most of the time I'm just like, if you get more than a 10, you succeeded. And if you get less than a 10, then
Mhm.
something unlucky happens. Which I also say something unlucky happens instead of like, you failed. Because for a lot of my kids, the emotional impact of feeling like I failed, it doesn't sound like it's a game thing. It feels like it's a personal thing. And so I changed the wording on that.
Yeah.
Do your clients ever take on the role of dungeon master, or do you typically guide the sessions?
I do typically guide it. The person making up the world is the one called the dungeon master, and I usually take that role. If I was in a one-on, I've had like two times that this happened in the past where I'm in like a one-on-one session with a kid who really loves D&D, and I let them like test run their skills by making up some dungeon master things, like making up world scenarios, and me just responding to them in a more informal way. Um, and then I've had a few kids where they're kind of they either don't like something about the way that the story went or they're disappointed in some kind of outcome, and so they're like arguing with me a little bit about like what would happen, and I'll usually say like um I if you were the dungeon master and you were running the game, then you could make up whatever you wanted, but right now we're trying to do a team game, so I have to take everybody's thoughts and make the story out of that. um and I've had one kid really really respond to that, and they were like, wait, like, do you mean I could do this? And I was like, I mean, I think that you could, like, I think you could learn. Yeah. And so then in their one-on-one sessions, then they wanted to practice
Mhm.
like what it would be like to be doing the dungeon master role. And I'm like, yeah, totally.
What tools or supports help make the game accessible for all players?
We have a lot of the sensory stuff just because that really goes with the profession, a lot of fidgets and a lot of I have so there's one kind of character sheet that's the one that's like published by the company who makes D&D. but I made a simplified character sheet, which has way less on it visually, way bigger spaces to write in instead of having to be able to write tiny. And it makes the numbers part of it a little bit simpler. And so that's been helpful. Um, we've got, whenever I run a group session, then I have another, the way my clinic does it, then there's more than one person who can work at a group session, not just one therapist. So I've got somebody there who can help with when others can't read something or don't understand something that I said. They might be able to help explain it, or they're trying to add some numbers together and they're struggling, then they might be able to help them with it. So I guess if I was going to summarize that, I would say like movement tools, fidget tools, simplified, but so like the kids can choose whether they want to do a simplified character sheet or a complicated character sheet, and either one of them is part of the same game. So it's not like they're left out if they choose that they want to simplify it for themselves a little bit. Um, and having somebody else there to support is a really big help. But it's also just kind of a game that has a built-in lot of support, because you're literally just making it up with the people who you're with. And so if something's not working or something doesn't make sense or something's a struggle or whatever, you can just make up something different. Like it's very, very unique and specific to whoever it is who's playing it. And that makes it kind of more accessible by default.
What if they don't understand imagination aspect?
I think that probably my like sample size is like biased, because the kids, there's never a kid who like shows up for OT and I'm like, by the way, we're going to do D&D right now. Like I don't decide that for them. I am like, I'm offering this D&D group, and if your kid is
Oh.
interested in it, then they can come. So I do think that that's part of it, is that kids who are coming are already like interested in it or want to do it in some way. That's how I do all OT that I do. I'm a very child-led OT, and so I never am like, this is the activity we're doing and you have to do it. I'm always like, here's 3 or 4 things we could do, and if you want none of them, then that's also fine. And whatever you're interested in, then like I'll follow your interests.
I didn't realize that. Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, that's okay. That's a good question, because I forget, like not all OTs are actually child led, and so yeah, no, that's a really good question. But yeah, I think that means that I haven't really encountered anybody who was like someone who couldn't imagine a story. I've encountered people who have, but I wasn't playing D&D with them because they didn't sign up for being a part of D&D. So
Mm.
How do the cooperative aspects of D&D translate to real-life teamwork or social interaction skills?
a good example of this is that in my last holidays, so like over the school holidays here in Australia, which are 2 weeks long, in between like each quarter of school, then they have a 2 week long break. And in the first week and the second week, they run a group of some kind. So there's D&D group, Lego group, gaming group, like all kinds of different ones. And so D&D group is the one I was running. And in the first week, it was really, the kids were having a lot more social bumps and difficulty with, like I said, wanting to be the star of the show and not really wanting to listen to anybody else's ideas. And I was doing a lot of moderating that. And in the second week, because it's the same kids for both weeks, and so by the second week, it was already like miles better because they knew each other, they had practiced cooperating before. And so I really believe that it can like translate outside of just an imaginary setting or just a fantasy setting, into being able to interact better or like think through things or have practiced, letting somebody else share their thoughts, or practice listening to what they had to say, practice problem solving with somebody else. I feel like all of that is really powerful to experience through play and then take into your rest of your everyday life.
Do parents always see the carryover?
Um, I don't know that it's like, I mean, this is true of a lot of things in OT, that I don't know if it's like I can directly trace this back to that time that you played D&D, like, or that time that you had that OT session, or whatever it is, because it's more subtle than that. It's part of child development and maturity and
Oh,
all of those types of things. Um, I guess the only sample size that I have to talk about that is my own self, because I've been playing D&D since 2016. So I mean, well, that's what, nine, oh my gosh, 9 years by now. And so I can tell that my people skills have improved over those 9 years. I can tell that my um, thinking of things on the fly skills have improved, like improv, or improvisation, being able to react to stuff that's unexpected, or roll with it, or moderate what people are arguing about, or stuff like that. I can trace a lot of those back in my own life to D&D, but I have like 9 years of data to like look at that, and I don't have that on any of the kids who I work with.
What challenges have you faced in using D&D in your art practice, and how did you work through them?
Let's see. Um, a lot of the challenges are just kind of related to how to make a space safe and accessible for everybody when people have different needs from each other, and not wanting to prioritize one person over another just because theirs is like a easier need to meet, or like the one that happens to match me, or like whatever. Like, I don't want to bias toward any of the kids and away from any of the kids. So like, even stuff to do with the story that I'm making up, or the world, that the challenges that I'm presenting them with. um like there was a time when I was running a game, and it was becoming really obvious that the kids really just kind of wanted to like destroy things. Like, that was how they wanted to solve problems. Like, I was like, okay, there's like this forest and it's full of these tangled vines, and like, how are you going to get through it? And they're like, we burn it down. And I'm like, okay. And then there's like this guy, and he's like telling you about this quest, and they're like, can we punch him? And I'm like, well, no, we're not just going to haul off and punch random people, but also it's very clear that you want to just like destroy your way through this adventure. And I had all these like puzzles and riddles and stuff that I like wanted to do because I thought they were cool. And I had to like let go of my own ego and be like, listen, these children are not even going to enjoy the riddle. They're going to be like, we destroy the riddle. Like, we
mm,
we set the puzzle on fire. And so I had to so instead I changed what I had planned for the adventure. So when they got to the next room of the dungeon, I'm like, and this room's just like full of like a bunch of like wood and these weird glass bottles full of different colored liquids, and it's all like blocking your way. You can see the door behind it, but you're blocked by all of this stuff. And they're like, we set it on fire, we start throwing all the bottles
mm,
around, and they were like super excited about it. I had to let go of, like, who is this for? Is this for me to feel like I made up a cool puzzle and everybody told me I'm so cool? No, that's not what it's for. It's for the kids to like get a chance to cooperate and problem solve and all these kinds of things. And kids like to play with themes that feel powerful, because in their real life, if they encounter a problem, the odds that they can solve the problem by breaking it or lighting it on fire are very low. Those are very
yeah.
few problems that can be solved that way. And so kids like to play with powerful themes. And it also doesn't mean that they're like a dangerous person, or that they don't know that fire isn't safe in real life or anything like that. It means that people like to play with power. And so being able to take my ego out of it, and be like, okay, like, I need to be responsive to what the group kind of needs, is a challenge that I'm still getting better at.
Thank you, Kelsie, for doing this with me. It was
Yeah.
great to have you on. Please share this talk show with your family, friends, clients, and colleagues. Everyone watching, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and share on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.